Welcome to the Exploring Spirit podcast. Join John and Sue Cook for a gentle, conversational guide to your spiritual development. Together with their guests, John and Sue will share their experience and wisdom to bring you insight and empowerment on your spiritual journey. This is episode 2, Personal Journeys.
This podcast is about exploring our personal journeys.
Your journey starts with life, really. But I remember when I was very young, I seen my first what I would class as a spirit, and it turned out to be my grandmother, who I had met, but when she appeared to me, she appeared quite a bit younger than I'd known her on the earth. And I only found out it was my grandmother because I didn't recognise her. I thought she was my mum, and obviously she wasn't. Was when I explained it to my mum and my aunt, and they showed me pictures of my grandmother when she was younger, and I identified as the person that I'd seen, and then they explained that was my grandmother when she was young. So that was one thing that I learned very early, is that when you go to spirit, you don't have to stay at the age that you actually passed that. You can go to an age that maybe you enjoyed more when you were a little bit younger. So I quite liked that idea. And then from there, many years later, a lot of things happened to me when I was young that people would say is like coincidences or whatever. I knew things that I took for granted, actually. It's only later in life that I've looked back and thought it wasn't normal that I knew these things about people. And there was an holiday camp one where it was was in a social club with my mum and dad. I wasn't very old, maybe 9 or 10. And there was a soft toy in, it was a dog that moved in a basket, and straight away I thought, I like that. And it was a raffle prize, and I says to my mum and dad, buy some tickets, we're going to win that. And at the time, my mum and dad looked at me, because there must have been over 100 people in this club, maybe even more. It was a big club. And they did buy tickets, and there you go, we won it. And so that kind of thing happened to me. I just got a feeling we'd win it. And I was pleased because I wanted it at the time. Later on in life, when I'd got my own business working with mine and my wife at the time. It's my earlier wife who sadly passed away. Also named Sue, funnily enough, I like the name Sue. We was running a video store, and she'd always been spiritual. She'd always seen and heard things and knew things, which, because of my background, I accepted, and there wasn't a problem. But we never really talked about it until we actually wanted a new employee at the video store. And one of our regular customers, who was a little bit younger than us, and he came in, and he used to have he was a white guy who had dreadlocks, and a very tall, big guy. And he came in, and very manly to look at. And he came in and he says, I hear that you want somebody to, you want to employ somebody? And me and my wife looked at him and said, well, we do, but we haven't put the advert in yet. And he said, well, I've just been told that you want somebody, and I think I'm the right person for the job. So we was a bit surprised. So we gave him an interview, and obviously we employed him. And we found out, was working spiritually. He was the one that was working shamanically, Native American, and he actually got me and my wife Sue got us working shamanically with himself. And then we learnt a lot about the Native American world. And he turned to me one day and he says, John, he says, why are you doing Native American? I just wondered. And I says, what do you mean? And he said, well, you're not actually Native American, are you? He says, you haven't got an horse, you haven't got a teepee, you don't live that lifestyle. He says, I've been waiting for you to ask me what else you could be doing, because you should be working in this world, England, and that would be the spiritualist churches, which he actually had already done previous to this. And I didn't know what a spiritual church was at the time. Even though I'd drove past them many occasions and not even noticed them. He explained to us where they were. We went in, and from there we got involved in the spiritual church background. We started to work spiritually. We was only there 5 minutes, and we was in the circle, the open circle. Then we got invited into the closed circle. I think we'd only been going about 4 or 5 weeks before they had us up on platform with a group of other trainees, which we was a bit surprised, but we did it anyway. And from there, we both started working the churches. And it was amazing that we did, because we'd lost people, which is what had got us into the spiritual way of thinking anyway, because when you lose people, you are more interested. And my wife, unfortunately, had a stroke not long after. If we hadn't been involved in the spiritual world, I think we'd have struggled with that even more than we did. But because we'd actually started to understand a bit more about life in a spiritual sense, it's not just about the body. It helped us to cope with the fact that she'd had a stroke. And we still used to work spiritually. We always used to work the platform. She used to go up on the platform in a wheelchair. I used to always pray for a low platform, because I used to have to pull the wheelchair up onto the platform, especially if I hadn't got a ramp, which some had some hadn't. But she used to love working the platform. We did private readings together. But unfortunately, her condition deteriorated, and she was only young at the time. She was 49, just after her 49th birthday. Unfortunately, well, tragically, obviously, she passed away. But again, she's always been with me ever since. She's definitely a guide. She loves to help people, so whenever we run a circle, she's often there helping everybody to develop, because she loves that. I do believe that she brought me and Sue, you, together.
Yeah. Sue too,
together. And it just happened that you'd got a calf at the time. And so it was a venue that we'd readily got. When we met, we didn't meet spiritually, we met online. There was nothing to do with my spiritual background at the time. You had a reading, so you wasn't...
I was interested.
You was interested, yeah.
But I hadn't realised until meeting you and our worlds sort of colliding the way that they did about spirituality in that way. I grew up in the countryside. I grew up at Churchill Farm, so church was quite a big part of growing up. I used to go to church just to be with my granny, really. And I can remember light coming in through the windows once, and how you get shafts of light with dust motes, and saying to my granny about it, and she said, "Oh, that's everybody from the churchyard just coming in to join us." As children, we were never scared of the churchyard. You had to walk past it, down one drive, past the church and up the drive to where we lived. Never bothered me. And I do remember as a small child playing with other children, and then realising when I was about 5 or 6 that other people couldn't see the children I was playing with. And it wasn't until much, much later I realised that my mum had had miscarriages. So I feel that there were spirit children around that I was playing with. You sort of put things away and don't think about them until you need them. But I've always had a knowing, and I think growing up in the countryside, surrounded by nature, and I feel I'm a very sort of grounded, natural person, that I've not really sort of thought about with spirituality until much later. And when we met, it was like, oh, the cafe's a perfect place to hold something like this. But I hadn't realised the years that I'd had the cafe were sort of training, because people come in to talk to you, to tell you the problems. I hadn't realised until I took on the cafe how many lonely people there were in the world. I'd always been lucky and part of a big family, so I've never been lonely. And I realise how lucky I am for that. But people coming in, it was only a small cafe, so you got to know people very well. And I loved that. And I think that was sort of, I don't know, a precursor to perhaps meeting you and then holding circle. We used to host psychic suppers in the cafe, didn't we? Yeah. But the circle really began there. Eventually we outgrew the space, so we moved it to elsewhere. we did mention on the first podcast that the spiritual circle is open to everyone from every walk of life, adults over 16, up to any age. And we've had everyone from different walks of life, different religions, different backgrounds, because basically we're all spirit coming together. And in circle, we do various exercises that help each other. I mean, I was probably your most reluctant student at first.
One of them. You're not the only. I've had others as well, but yeah, you was one of them. But and we've had 4 venues for the circle over the years. But you reminded me of a story actually when you was talking about what really got me into the churches. Because you mentioned spirit children, and of course that's very important. And the first time me and my wife went to an actual service, the medium at the time, he actually came to us, and I wouldn't say I was sceptical, but I was open-minded, but I wanted proof. And he mentioned straight away that we'd lost a baby, which we had, and that he said it was a girl, which my wife was always convinced she was carrying a girl. And I've learnt over years that women do now. Women, as soon as they conceive, they often know, well, they always seem to know the sex of the child. They kind of spiritually connect, which is why it's so difficult when you lose children as a miscarriage or whatever, because you've already, as a woman, you've already connected to that child, so it is awful. But he mentioned that he got a name. Well, at the time, we discussed that the name was going to be, I think it was Sarah. I'm pretty sure Sarah, because that's a name I liked, and I'd assume that if it was going to be a girl, it was going to name her Sarah. But he came out with the name Emily, and I thought he's wrong, because we'd never discussed the name Emily. And so I thought, well, he's got that wrong. I looked at my wife, and she was crying. There was tears running down her face. And I thought, what's the problem? And when he'd finished and we was able to talk, I asked, and she said that was the name I was going to name. I never told you, but I was going to name her Emily. And that was what convinced me then of the fact that this is a genuine thing. And we all need convincing. We all need something to... And that was my first real shiver down the back connection, that this is real, and that's what made me want to pursue it a bit more and get more involved. And there was a time, and some people might find this is as incredibly, what shall I say, some people might not believe it, basically, it's a bit out there, but the one day, my wife, and she was incredible medium, as is Sue now, though, she doesn't realise how good she is, but as she says, she's reluctant sometimes. But my first wife, so she was very, very sort of out there in that sense. She said to me one day, do you want to meet Emily? And I says, yes, of course I do, yeah. I said, how can I meet Emily? She says, she's sitting on my lap. And she was sat on the stairs. And she said, if you want to come and meet her, she says she's happy to meet you. And she says, just come and sit next to me on the step, which I did. And then she says, I'm going to pass her to you. And I couldn't say anything, but she got her arms and she passed. And as she passed, I felt this girl crawl onto my lap. I felt this body, this person. And this is what I mean. Some people might find this hard to believe. To be honest, at the time, I was blown away because I'd never felt a physical spirit in the way that I did that particular day. And she sat on my lap for a good 5 minutes. And I just sat there with tears running down my face, and I could actually feel my daughter. Sue said to me, she'd asked her if I wanted to hold her. And I think that's partly why Sue unfortunately didn't live to be an older person, because she was so connected to spirit in a way that I've never really known it in such a physical way that she could do these sort of things. But she taught me a lot. I've tried to teach everybody a lot of the things that she's taught me. But then from there, obviously, as Sue said, we started the circle, which has become the most important thing to me now, teaching and passing on to both of us, I would say. Yeah. And in between, I've done we've both done theatre shows. We worked with some, what you class as famous mediums over the years, and we've gone through all that realms of the spiritual fair, which is also another valid place to go and explore your spiritual awareness. There's so many people you can talk to. We have met fantastic people.
Oh, we've met some amazing people at the fairs, people who have inspired us. You used to work doing readings. I had a spiritual stall. But some of the people that we've met have inspired us to do more. And it's made us realise how people do need to come together, hasn't it, as much as anything. And I mentioned before being reluctant to sit in the circle at first. And I think we all come to recognising our spiritual aspects at the right time. And I talk about divine timing. And then I was 50 when I sort of came to that. And I don't think I would have been ready to experience what John did in the detail he did earlier. But from there, it was just natural. I was slightly in awe of John as a reader, and I'm not very good at doing things that, well, I don't like doing things I'm not good at. So I was reluctant. But then one night in circle, in a meditation, I had a really wonderful meditation, and it just stirred something within me. And I've sat in circle, and I've helped run the circles for years now, and I still feel that I can help the people that are new to this, because I still feel, and that those little wow moments that John's talked about, that when people come in and they're not sure that they're in the right space, they're not sure why they're there, but there's something that pulls us all together. It is wonderful then that we can explore spirituality together, who we are, why we are, and why we need each other. Because this is the earthly life that we're living now, but then we go on to something else. And I'm a hypnotherapist and I do past life regression. Past life regression is amazing because I've not regressed anyone yet that doesn't recognise their past life completely. They may be a different sex, very often a different race, in a different country that they've never been to, but they recognise that that is them.
And the other thing that's important, and Sue hasn't told you this, when she goes into a regression with somebody through hypnosis, she actually is able to join that person, and she can tell you when you've come out of it, things that you haven't necessarily mentioned, and it gives you the proof that you've actually had this experience because Sue's also experienced it with you and seen things that you saw. And basically, she can actually help to explain and help you to understand what you've experienced, which I always think it's important with anything spiritual, because I've heard people sometimes, is that you give proof. You have to give proof in some way, because we're all sceptical a little bit, and that's an healthy thing. And
it is healthy to be sceptical, and we are still sceptical of certain things, certain people. We like proof, like John's just said, and that is what we teach, that you do need some tangible proof that it is spirit coming through.
And we like it to be scientific in a sense as well. We like it to have some common sense, to make sense, because some of the terminology that people say, and we will discuss this as well in the future, I don't always feel comfortable with, and I like to explain things. And if somebody says a word that they don't explain, I think it can mislead people. I'm not saying it's wrong, I'm just saying that they need to explain what they're talking about. That's how I feel. Everything has to have proof, everything has to have an understanding. I'm always questioning, Sue's always questioning. I mean, you have to question, because if you don't question, you don't learn, and it doesn't make sense to you. So we always teach.
Well, I think also the older you get, the more you want to know, but you really want to feel that you know it. Because it has to resonate with you. And we always say to people, if you're getting things, or if somebody is saying something that doesn't resonate, it's not for you. And that's okay, because working with spirit, there are so many different ways that you can do it. Seeing, hearing, different smells. There's no right way, there's no wrong way, as long as it's done with respect. But we need to know on a personal level that what we're doing is right,
Yeah.
that it feels right, and it is resonating with us, don't we?
And that's part of the teaching, because when you're working with people, giving them readings or healing or whatever you do spiritually, people that you're working with can be vulnerable in so many different ways. They can be like I was when I lost Sue, and when you lose anybody important, my mum and dad, Sue's lost obviously her mum and her sister and different people. Whenever you lose the important people, you are vulnerable. You're at a weak point in your life, so you need somebody to be authentic. You need them to give you full proof, and you need them to give you the comfort that can only come with knowing that your loved one is still with you. And that's what it's all about. It's giving us comfort, proof, and putting us on the pathway of knowing that our loved ones have not left us. They're still with us, they still care about us, and they're still part of our life, because I don't believe they're in the past. I believe they're current, and they often give us proof about what's happening in our life now.
Yeah, absolutely, they do. Yeah, so that we know that they're with us. They can tell us what we've been doing, even down to the trivia about perhaps you've been and bought new shoes. Or I remember giving a reading to a lady once at a show. It showed me a very fast car, and apparently she did always drive very fast, and her mum was always telling her to slow down, and that created a laugh that evening. But it was just that it's always the little things, the bits of proof, because let's face it, life is all about the little things and how they come together to make such a wonderful, vibrant picture. And that's how spirit weave their magic around us. And we do both believe that there is a magic in it that makes everything more interesting. It's certainly made our lives interesting through the people that we've met, the people hopefully that we're still to meet, because this is so important to us.
Yeah, and at the end of the day, we're just normal, everyday people, and same as everybody else. We've just found a way to talk in a new language. Well, it's the oldest language ever, actually.
There is nothing new in this world, John.
No, there's not. How to communicate with the people around us, which we do actually do, all of us. We all pick up energies from other people. We all connect in a way we don't always understand. Animals do, we don't. I think we forgot. And it's about relearning how to pick up those energies and learn that way. One of the things that we haven't talked much about, so is you. You have mentioned briefly, but you haven't said what you actually do. I mean, you mentioned the regression. Yes, we did talk a little bit about that, but you do so much more than just, than regression.
Yeah, I am a hypnotherapist, psychotherapist, which I came to again late in life. And it's probably the most interesting part of my life work-wise. And I think it all sort of came together because of the work that we do. And although I trained as a clinical hypnotherapist, I did notice spirit coming into my work. And I remember thinking, should this be happening? Should spirit be coming in and having a conversation with you? And you saying, why not?
You fought against it for a while.
I did, because I thought, I've got to do this in a clinical way. But when I was doing hypnotherapy with people and their loved ones were joining them, there were some people that I didn't tell because I just knew that they wouldn't appreciate it. But it just adds an extra dimension that people having hypnotherapy, if their loved ones join them on that journey, they're there for that help and support.
And healing.
And healing, because the healing that can come through is immense with hypnotherapy. And I think all of the hours that I used to spend gazing out of classroom windows was my precursor to doing guided meditations.
Oh, they're amazing, your guided meditations. We'll have to do one of them on one of the podcasts,
Yeah, perhaps we could do a short one in the future. And again, I'm not very good at reading from a script. I just make them up. And when I say I make them up, obviously I'm guided. And very often I'm so surprised that where a meditation will go, because I sit down, I think, I think I'll do that. And then it just goes off into something else. And it can be within a group just what somebody really needed, because spirit are in control. And I'm happy to just let that flow through me and really enjoy it.
And what I love is when people say, because a lot of people struggle with meditation, because I think they try to empty the minds for one thing, and that's impossible because your mind doesn't empty. It empties by thinking of all the rubbish that's in your mind. When I say rubbish, everyday stuff that you try
your
not to...
shopping list and stuff like that. Yeah.
But if you think of all that, then that is kind of emptying, and eventually you do get to a calm sort of place once you've thought of all those things. But what amazes me is the people who say, I can't meditate, I can't relax, and I struggle with relaxation. And often, without blowing your own trumpet, you've given guided meditation for people that have said, well, I don't think I'll be able to go. I'm not saying everybody does, but so many of them at the end have said, that's the first time I've been able to meditate. That's the first time I've actually gone somewhere. And the things that people have seen and experienced through the meditations, that's been magical as well. And it's been amazing in the groups. People, what they've... So I actually think you should do a podcast with a meditation, because I think you'd be able to help a lot of people who struggle to relax. So I think that's kind of giving you a rambling again about how we started to a degree. I mean, there's obviously more stories, more things, and we will hopefully try and explore and talk about those in upcoming podcasts, if you're still interested to listen, of course.
Absolutely.
And we thank those that have listened, and we hope you've had something from this.
So sending love to you, as always.
As always, bye for now.
You've been listening to Exploring Spirit with John and Sue Cook. John and Sue are always happy to hear from old friends and new listeners alike. You can reach them via their website at johncookmedium.co.uk or on their Facebook page, John Cook Medium. We thank Vitaly Vakulenko for the rights to use his music via Pixabay.